time to live and be.
All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to the Monica Brant Show. I am Monica Brant, and I'm super excited because I have two wonderful ladies on tonight. One of them is co-hosting with me, IFBB superstar Wendy Fortino. Where are you, Miss Wendy? There she is, Mrs. Wendy. Sorry. Remember, you're married. Like, I sometimes just say Miss, and then I get in trouble for it. But hello, Wendy. How are you tonight?
I'm good.
Today?
I'm good. Excited,
Awesome.
Of course, as always.
I know. I mean, you know, the celebrities we get to talk to are endless stories and wonderful history and just super, super human. So it's always fun to get to visit with them. And tonight is, or today, tonight, whenever people are watching this, I guess, is somebody who I've known for many years, but it seems like we've always been busy and it's kind of hard to connect sometimes, but many, many years. And she is a tremendous, oh my goodness, athlete, mentor, leader, you name it, she's done it. And I was laughing because I went on her Facebook page and it says health coach, business mentor, leadership consultant, and speaker. And I'm like, that does not say enough about all that she's done. So I have to dive in a little bit. And I know you're probably going, what? Just health coach? I'm like,
yeah,
that doesn't seem like it's enough.
Well, it's because there's so many people that hold that same title that when somebody has so many years of experience under their belt, it's hard to, differentiate and figure out the hierarchy of the
what?
For sure.
Right. So I'm like, okay, health coach. Well, she certainly coached thousands of people, and business mentor. Okay. So those are the things, as we get older, I guess we just try to minimize our credentials, but I want to dive into a little bit more of her credentials before we bring her in here.
I want to say one more thing really fast is that I've noticed that people who have the most credentials, who have accomplished the most, a lot of times are the most humble, because the more you know, the more experience you gain, the more the smaller you feel on this planet, the more mentors you've had, the more you have perspective on, the fact that you're a lifetime student, and the people that are the most flamboyant and confident and seem to, be the larger than life, seem to be people that don't have as much experience as what I've noticed,
Mm-hmm.
The more I know and the more experience I gain, the smaller that I feel, so that's probably it.
It's that humility, right? The humble spirit and humility, and, knowing what you know, but knowing that it's okay that not everyone else knows it. And once they get to know you. But so anyways, this gal, graduate of the prestigious Air Force Academy. And of course sets in tight for me. Not that I've been, but my dad was third generation West Point. And so you just hear all the stories of how it was. And I know that she had to endure quite a bit going through that, and just number one, getting into the academy and that. So I can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. As in the academy, she was a varsity cheerleader, and she was also in the cadet honor guard, which I know is a huge accomplishment. She's 11-time IFBB Fitness Champion with 4 Arnold Fitness Internationals under her belt and 18 years of competitions.
Wow.
That's a lot, right? She started in the American Gladiators, which I'm like, where'd she have time for that? She was stealth. She promotes the 𝗬𝗙cie Tanji Johnson Classic currently, and I don't know how many years she's been doing it. We'll find out. And she's an 𝗬𝗙cie and IFBB judge. And in her spare time, she and her husband run their clinic, their chiropractic and wellness clinic. And I guess at the end of the day, she's a wife, and that's probably the most important role that she has. So I don't want to minimize that, because we all know how important that role is for us, right? Yeah. Yeah. So let's bring in Mrs. Tanji Johnson Bridgman.
Hi, you guys.
There she is.
Oh my gosh, you guys make me blush. It's really hard to listen to someone talk about you like that.
I know, right? Well, the blush looks good on you because you look radiant.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
We'll talk about you because you don't talk about yourself. So
that's true.
I'm like, health coach. That's it. Oh, well, I like how Wendy worded it. It was relevant and made a lot of sense. So goodness, girl, you've done an awful lot of things.
Thank you.
Yes, and successfully. Not just that you've done a lot, but you've done, successfully, and you've crossed over into so many different areas of life. And you have a name that's not only respected, but just people look up to you. They love you. You're loved by thousands of people internationally. And I know you know that, but I have to say that for any of my viewers that come on that don't, maybe know the fitness world as well. But, you've just been, you've been there for so long. You've got such integrity in all you do. And it shows up. And I love the fact that it shows up over all the years. Because when we started, and I know probably how I started, you started, and we just, Wendy, we just kind of started. And then over the time of staying in the course, being consistent, that name just builds so much integrity and respect and honor. So you are one of the legendary athletes who have helped create this industry. And it's so fun to just, hearing and reading and, learning about what you've done in your life, but now getting to talk to you. I'm so excited because I have a lot of notes and a lot of good stuff. And I know Wendy's probably bursting at the seams too. So awesome. Well, I always like to find out from my guest, what's 2020 and 2021 been for them, because we've all walked through something really crazy and wild and highs and lows. So what have your challenges been, starting with, 2020 and into this year, and what have your accomplishments? Because it seems like everyone, for the most part, has had both.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we've all been in the same boat, 2020, just dealing with the inception of COVID. And it's funny because, fortunately for me, health-wise, my family is doing really well. We haven't lost anybody. I know my husband and I, we think we had COVID back in February before everything got announced. I never get sick, but I had the flu for about 3 or 4 days, which I thought, I never get the flu. But, I had the flu, and then my husband got sick right after me, and it was a lot worse. And I remember thinking, what is going on? And then when we found out about COVID, I thought, oh yeah, we totally had that. And so since then, everything's been great. We've been very healthy. Now, career-wise, that was probably, as with a lot of people in the fitness industry, that's where the biggest challenge came, because initially we're all trying to figure out, okay, they're shutting everything down. The gyms are shut down. I can't have my show. People don't need me for posing because we're not having any shows. I'm not personal training. And so all this stuff was happening. And at first, I just waited because I think we all wanted to find out, okay, how long is this going to last? And then after about 2 months, it's like, oh, wow, we might be here for a hot second. And so for me, how I dealt with that challenge, it actually came at a beautiful time, Monica and Wendy, because in 2016, I retired from competing. And when I did, there was a big part of me that was tired and worn out from running hard and not just being a competitor, but all the roles that I served in. So I was tired of being a promoter, a coach, a trainer, a boot camp instructor, a competitor, a choreographer, all of those things. And so in my heart, I knew long-term, I need to transition out of my life being dominated 100% by bodybuilding. It's not like I wanted to leave bodybuilding. I just needed to get a little bit more balance, but I hadn't figured out how. And like most of us, we're good at doing certain things and they come naturally for us. And so I continued to do everything that I was doing other than competing. So when COVID happened and it just shut me down, I remember thinking, okay, well, here's my chance. It's time to figure out what new direction I'm going in. Wow. And because my personal health journey went from hardcore fitness to defining what mainstream wellness is going to look like for me. Because I remember having a 40th, I had my retirement party, and I remember telling everybody, okay, guys, this is it. Like, I may never have 6-pack abs again because I'm not trying to do 2 hours of cardio. I'm not going to be doing gymnastics 3 times a week. Like, the stuff that I did as a professional athlete, like I'm hanging it up. I'll continue to work out, but I need to be more gentle with my body, and I need to figure out what does that look like for me. And so as I evolved, I became more attracted to learning more about wellness in general, not just hardcore fitness. And so I decided to go to school for functional medicine health coaching and really fell in love with the concept of functional medicine. And so 2020 was a year of massive change for me in my career, because I said no to personal training. I said no to contest prep coaching. There was just a list of bodybuilding roles that I used to serve in that I had to say no, 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 so that I could say yes to functional medicine, yes to health coaching, yes to starting a wellness concierge with my husband. And that really just kind of changed things for me. And so now I'm in a place in 2021 where career-wise, I feel very balanced. I do about 50% bodybuilding, which includes posing, judging, and promoting my show. And then the other 50% is in the wellness space.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, girl. I love it because, you know, you took hold of that decision and you ran with it and you made it happen, right? Because sometimes people just think about something and then they don't actually really do anything about it.
Right.
They just sit on it. And then they're like 10 years later going, man, I wish I had.
I relate to you so much, Tanji. I can't even tell you, because I haven't been competing for 18 years, but I mean, I'm going on 12 plus years.
Right.
And it's this weird, like, introspective battle, because bodybuilding and fitness is my passion. It's my life.
Yes.
It's something that, like, I don't want to ever, you know, run away from just because maybe the script has changed by other people that come in and change a script. I'm like, this is my world. But yeah, I mean, there's like this shift moment where, you know, your whole life is consumed by it, and you want to feel that, I don't know if like the word balance is the word that I would use, because people like misconstrue that word, but yeah, really, like, you want to feel a sense of balance with your passion. I relate so much to you. It's crazy. I mean,
a big part
for situation.
I don't, you know, it's like where you are right now. I don't regret the time that I gave it, because in order to be great at anything, I do believe it requires a lot of prioritization and focus. And so I wouldn't be where I am right now as an expert in any of those areas if I didn't devote a lot of time to it. But as I got older, I just remember feeling like, and I think it's because I can think about my military days where it's like, I miss being a part of that community. I miss doing things in the community. I want to branch out into the business world in my own state and in my own city. I want to get involved in politics. Like, there's all these things I want to get involved in. I thought, well, who has time for that when everything I do, I'm at a bodybuilding show every weekend, you know? So when you think about your quality of life, and you think my life is consumed by people sending me pictures of them in a bikini and me analyzing their physiques and what we're all eating. And I thought, there's something that's not fulfilling about that after you've done it for 20 years, you know, like everything gets old, and sometimes it's time to evolve. And this is what evolving looks like for me. It doesn't mean shutting the door. It just means kind of picking and choosing what I keep my hands into and what I pass on to other people, you know?
Well, that's great, because now you've got so much experience and education from all that you've done, and you still can help others in a different way and in a different level, in a different area, because of what you've done. So that's awesome. And you said politics, which I'm like, I know you live in Seattle, right? Like,
oh my gosh. It's rough.
I'm assuming that they need you really bad. You know, we don't.
Save them. No.
You know, it's quite intimidating because, you know, and this might surprise people for me to say this, but I have such a high respect for leadership and the responsibility that comes with that I dare not judge anyone in a position that I am not in. Like, for example, you know, a lot of people, they can't stand our governor, right? And I, you know, whether I agree with everything he does or not, I don't necessarily judge, because I don't know what it's like to have the responsibility and the pressure of the safety and the health of our entire state on my shoulders. I don't know. I can have an opinion, but I'm not in charge. And so that's the part that's intimidating as I start to move forward, because eventually I am going to have some responsibility, whether it's on the city council or on a bigger level. And I got to be ready for that, you know?
Oh my gosh. I just see where God's taking you. And I don't know, obviously we don't, like you said, we don't know the level, but because of what you're moving into with the wellness and that part of life, and a little bit more mainstream, and you know, the integrity that you've kept in your background is going to serve so well for you. And I'm excited. So I will keep you in my prayers for God to bring you in through these doors and guide you along that path, because that's tremendous. And I mean, everybody needs a Tanji in their
community. Something that I admire about both of you ladies is that and this is the reason why I continue to look up to both of you and other people that I've looked up to, is that, as you evolve in your life and as you shift, you don't ever turn your back on the journey that you once had. And I think a lot of people tend to do that, and to be able to have that self-awareness to say that was a part of my journey. A lot of people, they get disgruntled about it, and they have, they're scorned or whatever the case may be. And as they shift into their next thing, it's all like just negative, thoughts. And it's that is, and it was part of your life and part of your passion. And you take that with you, and that there's something very honorable about that, and also to be able to look at, a position that you might want to have in the future, and have give grace to the people that you feel you could be in their shoes one day. And you're saying, okay, well, you know what? I want people to give me the grace that I'm giving them. And it's almost like a rest your head on your pillow knowing you did right by the world kind of a thing,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like right with yourself on that. And
totally,
people are going to judge you, and they're still going to, hate you and take personal attacks on you, which is what people do with politicians all the time. But you know that you could sit your head on your pillow every night, know that you did right by people in the way you judge them, and you can only hope the same for yourself, right? Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Judge not lest you be judged. Ooh, we all know that scripture, right? Oh man. Well, that is tremendous. It's so fun to hear that. And I would love to dive in a little bit more about that, but that may be all you want to share right now about that. But I would like to go all the way back and find out, about your history, where you grew up, how you grew up, and, because all of that is the foundation and underpinnings of who you are now.
I totally agree. I'm very proud of my childhood. I grew up as an Army brat because my dad was enlisted in the Army, and he served, for over 24 years. And he met my mom when he was stationed in Korea. So my mother is Korean, and I'm super proud of her because she was one out of 11 kids, and 9 of them were boys, and she was one of 2 females. The other girl got to go to school. So my mom never even got to go to high school because she stayed home to help raise and take care of her brothers and sisters. So my mother left her family during a time where it was not popular for interracial dating or marriages. So her family was not initially supportive of her marrying my dad. And she left the country, came over here to America, learned how to read, learned how to write, learned how to drive, speak English, all of that, and ended up, serving over 15 years at the commissary, which is a military-based grocery store. So I come from blue-collar workers that had 5 children. That's a lot back in those days, right? 5 kids on a lower middle income family. And so, most Asians tend to be very critical in nature and their culture anyway. And my mom was true to form on that. And then my dad, I'm really proud of him because he was kind of raised in the hood in Atlanta, Georgia. And when he saw what was going on around him, he wanted to get out. And so he enlisted in the military. And I really think it saved his life because it got him out of that environment. He was able to travel the world, meet my mom. And when he retired in South Carolina, which was close to his family, but not too close, right? And so I feel very passionate about when I think about young people and their environment. I know a lot of people say, oh, you can make yourself out to be anybody you want. But I do believe that where you are, the role your parents are serving in your life and your environment has a lot to do with the chances of that child being successful. So when I look back, I give so much credit to my parents because when they raised me, they were very strict. They cared, right? At the time, I thought they were just really unreasonable and mean and a little too sheltering, right? Oh my gosh. But now as an adult, I just thought, man, I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky that my parents cared enough to raise me really, really well. My dad was smart by making sure that he retired in a place that he thought that we could thrive. I went to a school where people were very smart, successful, and I'll never forget a conversation that my dad had with me when I was in 9th grade. And he basically sat me down and said, hey, I just want to let you know, because I went to a very affluent school, predominantly white, and all my friends had like parents who owned businesses. They drove cars to school and they had nice houses. And I don't know how, but my dad must have found like the least expensive house in the neighborhood. I don't even know how we got there. But I remember him saying, I don't want you to be surprised, but he said, your mom and I do not have any money saved up for you guys to go to college. Like, you're basically on your own. I'm telling you now. So you have 4 years to get it together, but you're going to need to earn a scholarship or go to school on student loans and make sure you work. So he said, it's totally up to you. You have everything that you need to be successful, but I'm just letting you know 4 years in advance that we're not going to have money waiting for you when you graduate. And I remember thinking like, oh, snap. Okay. And it was weird because talk was so serious that over the next 4 years, I mean, maybe I was one of the only ones, but I was so consumed with how am I going to get to college? I know I have to earn a scholarship. So not only did I focus on my grades, but I was pursuing student government. I even made up a dance team so that I could be the captain, so that I could do a check bar and get another leadership. You know what I mean? But
I had to put myself through college, and I'm actually relate so much to you.
Oh, wow.
What you're saying is almost like my story, but I busted my ass in track. I was like, okay, I need to go. Track is my ticket, you know?
Yeah.
But you're so athletic. I'm thinking, was there like, did you do sports?
Yes, I ran track, but in my mind, I was so inspired to go into the military because, I come from a military family. My brother, who is 4 years older than me, was at the Air Force Academy. So when I was a freshman in high school, he had just gotten accepted to the Air Force Academy. And like Monica was saying, like that was such a big deal because you're talking about an Ivy League military school where everything is paid for. I'm talking everything. Yeah. I remember I won a 4-year ROTC scholarship to multiple colleges, but I still had to figure out, but what about room and board? But when you go to the Air Force Academy or West Point or Naval Academy, it is all paid for. And so I remember thinking financially, wow, this is a really good option. And I want to be in the Air Force and in the military. So I knew I was going to go into the military. So even though I played sports, it was more my attraction to serve in the military that attracted me to my college experience than the sports necessarily. But I just remember appreciating that my dad, Monica, this is where it all starts. He taught me that if I'm going to achieve anything, that the personal responsibility is mine. So I can't say that enough. Personal responsibility is probably the key to my success because whether it's my fitness career, business, high school, I remember always feeling like it's up to me. I'm not going to be given anything. It is up to me. So what do I need to do? And I have carried that principle and that attitude with me throughout everything. So I miss my dad. I lost him about like 6 years ago when I was actually competing at the Arnold Classic Africa when he passed away, and my family decided not to tell me because he died the night before I got on stage. And then, I competed. And then later that night, my brother gave me a call. But I remember I think about him all the time and the way that he raised us, and what he taught me and how much that made me who I am today.
Wow. Okay. So a couple of questions. I'm really, that is so sad. And I guess, did your father, I know, right? Did your dad give the same talk to your brother and your other, because you said 5, so there's you plus 4. Did your dad give the same talk to all the siblings as far as this is up to you guys?
Yes. Yes.
Do you feel like they all were similar minded in the fact that they took on that personal responsibility and made it happen like you did? Or were you just an anomaly where you did that?
Well, my oldest brother, I don't even know if he had the talk with my oldest brother, but my oldest brother, I mean, I dare call him like a genius. So in my family, he's definitely the smart one. I mean, one thing that I'll tell you, I'll never forget, talk about perseverance. Don't think that it was easy. I had to take the SAT. Oh, I hated that test. I had to take it 5 times. And I can't even remember if it was my math score or my verbal that wasn't high enough. But I remember that I had to keep taking it because it wasn't high enough to get accepted. And I just remember that I just could not give up. I was just like, okay, I think there's only 2 months left where I can qualify to get an acceptance letter. So that means I could take the test 1 or 2 more times. I'm going for it, you know. But like my brother, he was like an early admission. He was a 4.0, super high marks. And I mean, he was a double engineering major at the academy. So I can't recall if my dad had to have that talk, because he was just one of those people that you just knew early on that he was going to be winning scholarships. You know how you get those kids in the family. So I feel like with the rest of us, my dad made sure that we knew, you know what I mean?
So your brother stole all that smartness, and then he left y'all with some scraps. But obviously you've been scrappy and you've made it work for yourself. So
well, okay, I do have
oh my gosh.
to add to this. I have a twin sister who she has like a photographic memory. She's same
Wow.
thing with your brother. Like everything came so easy. She could see something one time and memorize it. But I think, unfortunately, you know, there are so many different intelligences that children possess, and only you know, a few are recognized in school when kids are growing up. So there are so many, like your kinesthetic intelligence, your you know, your problem solving, you know, all these amazing talents and gifts that you have are just not rewarded in school, unfortunately. You know, you have to basically adapt your, you know, the weaknesses that you have that are basically things that are, you know, rewarded. You have to use those the best of your ability. But if they rewarded the intelligences that you possessed, it'd be game over.
That's so true.
It may be, you know, someday maybe education will be like that. And maybe they do a lot with the kids that are homeschooled more so with that, because it's a little more, it's not so controlled. You know, it's a little more, they want to allow the kids to flourish in different areas. So I'm not sure. I mean, I've never been able to have children, so I don't know that deep about it. But so you were obviously close to your parents.
Yes.
And, you know, okay, so how long have I known you, Tanji? Like,
it's been over 20 years, right?
And I have to say, I have never, ever, ever looked at you and thought you're a Korean Black woman. I just look at you like you're this beautiful woman. And it's so crazy because nowadays, you know, it's like all of this influx of information that everyone wants. And I never, I was listening to your other interview, the one, you know, with the leadership, and you said, and one of the ladies said something about you being a Black African, and it was asking you about your time in the Air Force Academy and being that, and you talked about that you was only 4 of you in your graduating class, and I was like, I kind of was blown away, like I didn't know she was Black. I mean, it never crossed my mind. And that's, I think, how we've been raised in such a different generation where like, you're just gorgeous. You got these beautiful white teeth and you got like beautiful skin. Like I know it, and I don't know, that just sounds crazy. And I never knew, you know, from Asian, but
I guess the thing mainly is, have there been any, you know, limitations or anything that have held you back? Because
I don't think so. Look at her. I mean, look at my notes. That's not the intro one, but no.
We don't see it, but maybe you felt like there were some more challenges.
While we're talking about your childhood, were there issues maybe at that point where, you know, your mom is Korean, right?
Right.
And your dad is African-American.
Right.
Like, how was that growing up? Because, you know, my parents are just both white people. I know we have Austria in the background and German, but, you know, you look at me, I just look white, whatever.
Right.
But, and Wendy too, not that, you know, but, you know, it's just kind of whatever. But as a child growing up with 2 drastic different cultures and parents, like, what were other kids good to you, or do you have different experiences?
Well, I want to back up real quick and say, number one, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, especially during our current climate right now. I feel like there's kind of 2 ways that we can look at this. First, there's humankind, right? There's just humankind. And so for us, the reason why you didn't see me as a Black woman is because you see me as a human first, right?
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of people consider themselves to be colorblind because they're very good at seeing humanity. You see a person, you see my qualities, you see my virtue, and that's really, really wonderful. And for the people that can't do that, you know, that can be a problem.
Right.
Now, there's that, but then there's also appreciating and celebrating culture. And so when I was a lieutenant in the Air Force, I was the president of the African American Club, and I was also the president of the Joint Multicultural Fair. And our objective was to celebrate diversity and to bring attention to and celebrate culture. And so sometimes in our society, I feel like people can be so colorblind or so in tune with humankind, right? That they neglect to be able to appreciate culture, the differences in those culture and what that can look like. So for example, and I'm not saying this is like universal, but you know, if you know that my mother's Korean and that I was raised by a Korean mother, you would like I know if I go into an Asian person's home, chances are 80% they're going to want me to take their shoes off. Right. And a lot of times I go into typical American homes, and I'm not saying that the average American doesn't want you to take their shoes off, but it's such a thing. Right. And I remember when I was growing up, my mother, who's Korean, learned how to cook soul food from my grandmother, my dad's mom. And I didn't even know it was soul food. But I'm telling you, I'm not going to be rolling into New Hampshire and they're going to be making the kind of food that they're making down in Georgia. Right. So there's cultural differences they're different by where you live. Like, and that's, I bring up New Hampshire because when I dated a guy that was from New Hampshire, I remember the hot dog buns were different. Like, have you guys ever had like New England hot dog buns?
Yeah.
Like there's just certain things that are different. And I was really fascinated by that. Yeah. So culture is not limited by race or by color. It can expand to geography, but I do feel that sometimes if we don't recognize culture, it's very easy for us to not be able to understand that sometimes things do happen like discrimination or judgment or stereotyping because you're so good at not seeing color. So I want you guys to know that I appreciate that you see me as a human being, but I also don't mind that if you saw me as a Black Korean woman, right? That is also an Army brat, because all of that makes me, I've got a lot of tendencies that are very deep in the Asian culture. There's some, you know, I don't want to stereotype Black women, but there's some, you know, there's some features that a lot of Black women have. And that is so me. And I'm even seeing it show up in how I raise my stepchildren, where I have to kind of pull back a little bit because their mom is white and she lives in the country and we're very different. And I think to myself, oh, the way that I am can be a little intimidating to them because they're not being raised by me 100% of the time. And so what's that?
It's so well put. I was going to say too, that I think that, you know, if somebody only has one experience in life and they only see the humanity, I think that it's important to realize that even though like I see the humanity, but I also understand that that is not your experience with everyone. You go through life and you have your own personal experience, and some people see the humanity and then some people don't. And it's important for people who don't understand that to appreciate that your experience is, you know, the way that you go through life, you know? So, but that was so well put, what you just said.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I know you were asking me if I've ever been treated differently. I would say back when, probably like 20 years ago, I remember I was walking through the boardwalk of San Antonio, the Riverwalk. And I remember, I was with that guy from New England. He was a white guy with like reddish blonde hair, super pale. And we're just walking down, holding hands, totally in love. And I mean, interracial dating wasn't super popular or accepted at that time. And I remember feeling that walking through San Antonio as people were looking at us. Now, when I walk around with my white husband, I feel something totally different. I feel like people are admiring us because we're a hot couple or we're a beautiful couple, right? And so it's really weird how much has changed in 20 years. Now, the recent thing that I can think about, my husband used to be from a small town called Ellensburg in the middle of Washington. And I remember after we got married and we moved to this small town, we were looking for a townhouse to rent. And I found this one townhouse that I fell in love with. And I emailed the lady, called her up, and, you know, she didn't know what I looked like. I just, you know, told her that my husband and I were, you know, we didn't have any kids. We didn't have any pets. We were both professional people. He was a doctor. I was a fitness professional. And that, you know, we loved her home. And, you know, she seemed to like us so much. She was like, oh, I'm going to talk to my husband. Maybe we don't even need to have an open house. I might just let you guys take it. Right. And I thought, yes. And so then I sent her my website, and because I wanted her to know who I was. And I think I sent her my husband's website. And then it was weird because after that, she just kept blowing me off. Like I would text her and say, so did you talk to your husband? Yes, I think we're going to have to, you know, have an open house. He wants to make sure that we interview certain people. And then I said, okay, well, let me know when you have the open house. And I mean, I kept bugging her for like 2 weeks. And she said, I'll let you know. I'll let you know. And I just had this like weird feeling. So I told my husband, I said, hey, I want you to email this lady and I want you to act like you're interested in seeing the house. And I just want to see what happens. So he emails her. She writes him back immediately and says, yes, we're having our second open house this Thursday.
Oh.
And so here it is. So my husband is like you guys. He sees humankind, right? And, you know, he hasn't grown up the way that I have. But when I first told him about it, I said, I don't like it. You know, I'm not one to call the race card, but this doesn't feel right to me. Like she's getting back to you saying that she's about to have her second open house, but she has been blowing me off ever since I showed her my website. And he just was in denial, and he just refused to believe that it could have been that. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know for sure if it was that, but it just strongly feels like it was that, right?
Right.
And I remember having to talk to him and explain that for him, it's so hard to believe because that's not how he thinks. So it's hard to accept that somebody else like him may think that way. But for me, it's not the first time that has happened, but it doesn't happen a lot. And I feel fortunate. So, you know, if we ever get to talk about privilege, whenever I talk about that term that people get really upset about, that term white privilege, right? I also want people to understand there's all kinds of privilege. I have the professional athlete privilege. I have the beauty privilege. I have the educated privilege. I have a lot of privileges because I'm educated, because I am well known, because I serve in leadership positions throughout my sport and the community. I don't get discriminated against very much at all, especially if people know who I am. Now, if people have no idea who I am, like this situation where I'm interviewing, you know, for a house, then maybe it shows up. But I have that privilege. And so I was explaining to my husband, it's okay to have privilege. Just understand, you know, one of the things I talked about in one of my interviews is that if I'm an attractive female, I have enjoyed certain privileges. Like I can't even tell you what it's like to not be attractive and be treated a certain way. So I don't even try to act like I don't get certain privileges for either being educated or skilled or professional, right? And so when we talk about race, you know, people get really defensive about that. And it's not supposed to be a bad thing. White privilege, educational privilege, those are not bad things, but it's meant to help you understand that everybody may not have the same experience and to help you be a little bit more understanding when something goes wrong and maybe how it came that way.
Right. Well, and, you know, I think all of us can say living here in the United States of America, we all have privilege living here. It's just what we've done with it. Right.
Right.
It's what have you done with the gift of the freedom of the country that we live in? And, and I think a lot of people are just, you know, honestly, there's a lot of people out there that are really lazy and they're really lethargic and they have no creativity. Maybe they've been on their phone too many years in a row, and they haven't done anything with that. Right. And so they, in my opinion, they kind of go with, they want to be the victim and they, you know, poor me, you know, it's because of my race or whatever they want to say. Right. But no, it's really, and like, we all have an opportunity at our feet. Now, you know, not everyone had a dad like you that encouraged you and showed you the path and was that leader for you. And, you know, not everyone had that. So, but those people also had other people probably in the people that didn't have the father like that. They still probably had some teachers that tried, someone, maybe another family member, somebody. everyone's had somebody in their life that tried to, further their abilities or encourage them in a different path, or like, you can do what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be in this lifestyle. And then people take it, as you get older, they take it or they don't, they
Right.
jump on the wagon of, I'm going to make something of my life, no matter if I go here or I go here, it's like,
yeah.
But that comes down to just your your innards, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do something.
And I think it's also your sphere of influence, because, when you think about, so I had a dad who raised me the way he did, and I immediately went to the Air Force Academy, which is a very ambitious environment. And so from early on, I have always been in an environment where people are striving to succeed. So from the Air Force Academy to the bodybuilding industry to becoming an entrepreneur in business, that has been my sphere of influence. And so I think that sometimes, if you've got a child or a person who their sphere of influence is a bunch of complainers or a bunch of victims, and you're surrounded by that victim's mentality, it's got to be hard to get out of that victim mentality if that's all you're around. So I do hope, Monica, that if those people have that sphere of influence where everybody's got that victim mentality, I really do hope that one parent or that one teacher or maybe some role model on TV can help them get outside of that mind frame. But unfortunately, I think the culture is very powerful when it comes to young minds.
I agree with you. I tend to maybe be overly compassionate sometimes, but I just, I feel like there are a lot of people who, don't grow up with influential parents, and it is a huge disadvantage. And I don't have the answer. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
But I think people try to solve that problem. And is why I think you are the perfect person to go into politics, because your ability to see every side
back to that
together so well. I could tell where you stand, but you also have so much ability to, have that compassion and be diplomatic. But I feel like, a lot of people want to do something about it, but they don't have the answer. And so the answer ends up being something that, infuriates everybody, and it is very difficult thing to unpack, to understand that there are people who are so disadvantaged and need so much help, but then how do we go about that? Nobody really knows,
Right.
Well, I think it's each of us doing what we can in the area of influence that we are in. Like we all have somebody somewhere that we can continue to support, encourage, and love on. And what God calls us to do is to love him with all our heart, mind, and soul, and to love our neighbor. And our neighbor is whoever's next to us and whatever that influence is. But so we're going to take a really quick break, and we're going to come back and talk more about your time at the Air Force Academy, because as a varsity cheerleader and then the cadet honor code, like, that's pretty cool. So I can't wait to come back and learn more about that. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Monica here. Just wanted to thank you so much for watching the Monica Brant Show. And don't forget to subscribe, like, share these videos. And and that little bell notification. Don't forget to click that so you'll get more great content every time there's a show uploaded or a video or anything else. So you guys, thank you so much for your support. And as always, stay fit and love.